Hi, everyone. You can read this book by yourself or with someone in your family if you want. But if you don't have anyone to read it with you, or it's a little bit too hard to read by yourself, I'm going to help you read it here too, if that's a choice that you would like. So this book is called 3D Shapes: A Trip to the Grocery Store. Justin loves to go to the grocery store. He pushes the cart. He helps his mother find food. The grocery store is a great place to hunt for shapes. Some shapes are plane shapes. A plane shape is flat, so that's just like the 2D shapes we've talked about, like that. It has 2 dimensions. The length is 1 dimension, so how the long way measuring, and the width is the 2nd dimension. You can measure length and width of a plane shape, and we kind of did that when we used the rulers or the non-standard measuring tools. You measured the length of your bed, and some of you measured the width of your bed and other things as well. In that little box on the bottom, the activity box, it says plane shapes are also called 2D shapes, which we know. The 2D stands for 2 dimensions. Can you name these 2D shapes? So I'm pretty sure you know this is a rectangle, a square. This one we didn't talk too much about. It's a 5-sided shape called a pentagon. We've talked about rectangle and we talked about circle. Every shape has length and width, and they show you a little picture here about how to measure the length and width of a rectangle and the length and the width of a circle. Circles are tricky to measure. 3 dimensions. Mom tells Justin that other shapes are solid. Solid shapes have 3 dimensions. You can measure the length and width. You can also measure the height. So when you have a 3D shape, something that is shaped like this, you can measure the length, you can measure the width, and you can also measure the height. If I put this box like this, maybe it'd be a little easier. You can measure how tall it is because it's 3D because you can actually see inside of it. Shapes with 3 dimensions are also called 3D shapes. These shapes have faces. Hey, there's a word we learned. They most often have edges and corners too. The faces are a 3D shape. The faces of a 3D shape are the flat parts, which we talked about already. The flat side of a cube or a prism, a rectangular prism. And a cylinder has 2 flat sides, but the whole thing isn't flat. And same with a cone, only has 1. The edges are the part where the faces join. So like on this example, the edges would be these parts. The corners are the places where the faces meet, and we've learned that special word for corners already, the vertices. A corner is also called a vertex for one, or vertices if there's more than one. Parts of a 3D shape. So they show you where the edge is, the face, the whole flat part, and then the vertex or the corner. And then there are some things that are 3D shapes in real life, of course, like this loaf of bread. A loaf of bread has a 3D shape. Sweet spheres. Sphere is like a ball. Mom asks Justin to help her pick a bag of oranges. An orange looks like a ball. A ball is a 3D shape called a sphere. A sphere has no edges, just like a circle, and no corners or vertices, just like a circle. Remember that day we did the circle, all the answers were 0? These shapes have just one face, and the face goes all the way around the whole sphere. The objects shown below are a sphere shape. So there's some here, and it asks if you can think of other objects that are spheres. Objects with 3D shapes can be piled, but it's tricky with spheres because they do something called roll. They don't have any flat faces to keep them still. Food cubes. Cube is the first one we learned. Justin and his mother visit the deli counter. The man at the deli counter offers them a piece of cheese, just like that cheese in our math the other day. The cheese is cut into cubes. Justin's mother says that a cube is a 3D shape. It has 6 square faces. That's what we learned in our math book. The faces are of equal size. That means they're all the same. Remember, equal means the same on one side as the other or just same. A cube has 12 edges. That means those lines that go on all the faces, the outside of the faces. It has 8 corners. So this is another way to draw a cube. We did one on Seesaw the other day, but this is another way to do it. Number 1, draw a square. Number 2, draw another square, but do you see how he has drawn it just like a little bit off so it's not right on top? Number 3 says, join the 2 squares using lines like this. So they put those little dotted lines in there so it looks like you can see inside. And then it says you have drawn a cube, and it has edges and corners or vertex or vertices, and then also some bases. Cylinder shapes. How about soup for dinner, Justin asks. Help me find a can of soup, Mom says. We also need a roll of paper towels. Soup can be messy. They find the can and the towels. Both things have the same shape. This is one of the ones we learned about. Mom explains that the can and towels are cylinders. A cylinder has 2 edges and no corners. A cylinder has 3 faces. It has a face on each end. So there's a top and a bottom face, like on the can, the top and the bottom of the can. And the third face connects the flat faces. The third face is that middle part. It goes all the way around. So I'm going to actually put some of these 3D shapes that you can cut out on Seesaw and mail them to your parents, email them, so that if you want to do this activity, you can. But here's an example of one. You could use a pencil to trace that. That'll be too hard on the computer. And then you cut it and roll it. But I'll email you some. That'll be a little bit easier. Cones come in handy. Oh no! There's a spill on the floor. Justin and his mom see an orange cone shape on the floor near the spill. The cone warns people not to walk there. You guys see these all over Dressel and in PE and everything. A cone has 2 faces. One of the faces is a round flat circle, just like the cylinder has on the bottom. The second face goes around the circle. It connects the circle with the cone at the other end. A cone has 1 edge and 1 corner. So the edge is just down there on the bottom, but the corner is that little tiny piece at the top. So there's another drawing activity to cut out a cone. I'm going to just email that to you. So here's 2 examples of cones. Building pyramids. Justin and his mom go to the bakery. Justin sees a tasty piece of cake. The cake has berries piled on top. The berries form a pyramid. So the berries are kind of like a sphere. They can pile on each other, but they can't really lay flat like the cake on the bottom. They wouldn't really hold the cake. The pyramid of berries has 5 faces if you put something on top of it. One of the faces is its base. This is a little bit easier to see looking at this blue one. The base is down here, that part at the bottom. A base is a face that a shape can sit upon. The pyramid has a square base, and it has 4 other faces, which are triangles. So this is kind of a weird 3D shape, isn't it? It's made out of 1 square face and 4 triangle faces. A pyramid that has a square base has 5 corners. There are 4 corners around the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, or vertices. There is 1 corner at the top, just like the cone. Right, good job. This kind of pyramid has 8 edges, and this is something fun you could try at home. Use blocks or books to build a pyramid. So you'd need like books that get increasingly smaller or increasingly bigger to make your pyramid. Rectangular prisms. We learned that in the beginning of the week too. They're everywhere. Justin sneezes into his sleeve. Achoo! He is doing a good job of sneezing like we learned about from Doug. Bless you, says Mom. I almost forgot we need tissue. Justin picks up a box of tissues. It has a small rectangle on each end. So here's the small one. The ends are connected by 4 long rectangles. So the example we looked at earlier had a square on each end, but if you stretch the square out, it could be a rectangle just as long as it's not the same length as the other ones, or all the same size, I guess. Mom says the box is a rectangular prism. Count the faces of a tissue box. There are 6, just like a cube. There are 8 corners and 12 edges. Wow. All right, the activity box says, get a pen and paper, have someone time you. Walk around your house and write down all the rectangular prisms you see in 5 minutes. You'll probably find a lot in the kitchen, too. Use your finger to outline the length and width and height. So, length, width, height. Those are 3 big math words. Triangular prisms. At the checkout. At the checkout, Justin and his mom place groceries on the belt. The belt moves the groceries forward, but first they must place a bar on the belt. The bar separates their groceries from other people's groceries. You probably have done that before at the grocery store. The bar is another kind of prism. It has a triangle on each end. It is called a triangular prism. Now, at my grocery store, this is actually shaped like a rectangular prism, but I've seen this kind before. This kind of prism has 5 faces. 2 of the faces are triangles, so that's the parts at the end. Those are the faces. The other 3 faces are rectangles. This is kind of a weird thing to look at with your eyes, but in the middle here, it actually makes a rectangle. You have to look carefully, though, because it makes you think it's a triangle. A triangular prism has 6 corners. It has been fun hunting for shapes at the grocery store. Now it's time to go home. So in the activity box, it says, help unpack the groceries in your house and look for the 3D shapes, some that Justin has learned about, or you might find some other ones too. Every item on the belt has a shape, and then here's the triangular prism dividing the groceries. All right, in the back of this book is that thing we've talked about a few times called a glossary, like a little tiny dictionary just for the words in this book. But this glossary is kind of cool because it also has pictures and names of some of the 3D shapes. All right, nice job with that book.